Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about conflict management, specifically how to incorporate analysis and synthesis into policy development. So we're going to be looking at a particular example assignment here, but these principles will hold true whether you're working on policy development for a business organization, for a nonprofit, for a faculty organization. So if you're not familiar with the Writing Center, welcome. We're happy to work with you. We work with students across the ACU Dallas, ACU online programs, and we work with students not just through webinars such as this, but also through providing resources and materials that you can use to help format your papers correctly, to understand different tasks, or to fulfill certain requirements. And also we provide one-on-one consultations or appointments that you can schedule with us. You can schedule asynchronous appointments, meaning you upload your paper and we look at it, and within 24 hours of your appointment time, we go ahead and send you feedback. And you can make special requests in the appointment form. Oh, could you please look at this? Or I'm particularly concerned with if I'm meeting the assignment requirements, or if this is formatted correctly. You can put notes like that in there, no problem. You can also request a real-time appointment, either by phone or by Zoom. Zoom, you'd be able to share screens, which some people really like because that helps them see how things work, and that visual reinforcement works very well for them. Other people prefer to concentrate on one thing at a time, and so they might just have questions where they want to ask over the phone without the visual distraction. Whatever your choice is, we have those available on the schedule, and one of the advantages of asynchronous appointments, you don't need to be present for it. You could make an 11 o'clock appointment for 11 in the evening, work up to that time, upload your draft, go to sleep, and we'll look at that and get back to you in the next day. So let us move forward. Now, every term we offer a set of brand new webinars that we record, and so you can access a complete catalog of our past webinars on different topics, including many course tie-ins. Some things that you might be especially interested for this term. We have offered live a couple webinars that deal with different services and resources we have, including a crash course in graduate writing in APA style. So if you've gotten some comments in the past asking you to brush up on your APA style, or if it's entirely new to you, you might be interested in checking out one of those webinars. We have a dedicated webinar on analysis and synthesis. That's the Beyond Summary webinar on Tuesday, May 31st. And that is something that is not only offered live, but it's also offered via recording. So if you are very interested in that and going further than the discussion in this webinar, you can watch that immediately. You don't have to wait till May 31st. Now, of particular interest to students who are watching this webinar because of the course tie-in for CONR 638, do be aware that the webinar being released on Tuesday, May 17th, the Conflict Resolution Writing About Moral Dilemmas, that ties in with another assignment for this very same class. And when that is recorded, it will be posted to our webinars archive. Speaking of which, if you go to the webinars page, scroll down past the schedule, you'll find this handy-dandy sorted guide where you can select the specific program you want to go to see all the tie-ins that we have there. In fact, let's go take a look at that right now. You can see that we have an expanding list here of different webinars that are available, and that we have a whole bunch with 602 and 604, 606, 610, 622, 628, and 630, and we're going to be adding new webinars for this course that we're talking about today. So you can always check back there. All right, let's move forward. You'll see me referring to the APA course paper template, which you can download from the Writing Center website. That is, if you go to Resources, APA 7, it's the top thing. All right, let us look at our main objectives today. First, we're going to start out by exploring the assignment for CONR 638. We're going to specifically look at how to ground your discussion posts with citations, analysis, and synthesis. and how to translate that into working on the group-written paper that will conclude this assignment. So, multifaceted thing. We're going to start out looking at the assignment itself. And this is drawn from the Ethics and Conflict Resolution course. This is our Peacemakers Ethics Policy assignment from the first module. Now, this assignment begins with the preamble, where it talks about things in a general sense before we get to the specific requirements. So each of the organizations on the required readings page has developed a set of ethical guidelines or standards, which they believe should direct their practices. As a peacemaker and leader, you should have a Peacemakers Ethics Policy for yourself and for the organization with which you are affiliated. For this assignment, assume that your group is an organization and decides to develop your own Peacemakers Ethics Policy. In your group, discuss the ethical guidelines or standards in the readings, the mission of your organization, and develop a policy that includes important standards and uniquely describes the ethical interests of your organization. Now, this is laying out in general what you're going to be doing. You're going to be collaborating with your classmates in a specific discussion board. You're going to create a group that you describe different characteristics of, or what you're working on, and what your policies are and why they exist, and how they further the things that your organization is trying to do. And this can be both compare and contrast, where you point out similarities and differences with the organizations that you have samples of. Step 1. Okay, so you're going to be posting in the forum, doing that compare and contrast that I mentioned. And there's a number of things here that we're going to come back to later, but reflect on the similarities and differences. You've got 6 to consider. Note the primary ethical principles, so you're going to be analyzing them and finding, okay, what are the common elements here? Each group member is required to contribute in certain ways, including adding original ideas or questions, so don't just reiterate, but respond to things, and add the things that are not just found in the reading, but are coming from your specific analysis. And, you should all be contributing here. One of the reasons that I recommend using Google Docs, which we'll get to later, is that it's very easy to track contributions when it comes to assembling the final paper, but also just looking at the discussion posts, you can see have people been responding or not. And, sometimes your colleagues need a nudge in the workplace and sometimes in the class, so if something comes up, contact your professor. And after the discussion board, you're going to be, after you start by discussing the samples, you're going to be describing this organization that you're going to sketch out for this assignment and what kind of conflict you're specifically focusing on. And here, there's going to be some element of proposing and agreeing here. So I would say, describe things that interest you. It's always easier to write about something that you are passionate about, that you are concerned about, and even that you would like to work on. And if you take some initiative in proposing and discussing things, then other people are more inclined to go along with that than if you come late to the discussion and after everyone is supposed to say, well, actually, I'd like to work on this other thing. So let's give the most clear and direct thing that you can here and give it in a timely fashion. All right, step 3. After that discussion, then you start working on the thing that you actually turn in as the assignment. And that's going to be one document per group, so you're going to be working on this collaboratively. More on that later. And you're being asked to create a PEP statement and rationale. And the instructor even states what they mean by that. So you have this note here. A good PEP statement will be one that recognizes the common and significant elements of the guidelines and standards and fits the unique interests of your peacemaking organization. So you should be not only stating things that align with the other standards, but pointing out how and why they do that, and how that is suitable to your particular mission. And if you've been working out in the discussion, this should be very easy because you're going to be drawing on and paraphrasing the material that was already written about what this organization is, what its mission is, and enumerating its policy. You can even ask each member of the group to contribute one policy item each for assembling this list. And you're, as the note, pull from the summary says you should be drawing on the discussion posts where you provided summaries. Depending on how large your group is, you might find it easier if you have each person summarize a separate policy and then you all work together on analyzing what's common or between them. And again, make sure that you all contribute towards this final document. All right, if we look at the rubric here, we find that this is a list of the things that it's asking you to do in the paper. So we've got the organization needs to be described in sufficient detail, have policy item statements that make sense, are relevant, that it is aligned with the organizations whose statements we're going to be studying, and the policies include a justification for what is or is not included. All right, so let's talk about those discussion posts and some guiding principles. Be as specific as you can. Compare and contrast specific policies, and when you're doing so, identify what you're referring to using citations and references. This is in part to make it easier when you're going through the paper and you don't need to say, okay, which one was that again? But just include that specific detail, author date citations. Make sure that there's enough detail in those posts so that you can use them as crib notes when you're working on your portion of the paper. Make sure that you do not include, that you leave out details that are not directly relevant to your argument. So those standards and guidelines, that's the one referred to in the instructions here. The contrast of standards and guidelines listed in the reading from Module 1. Here's a direct link if you're having trouble finding it. We sometimes get questions from students saying, hey, I'm not sure what this refers to. And you can always address those to your professor. But if you want to send that to the Writing Center, we'll take a look and help set you straight on something like that. I realize that there are a lot of resources for each week, and you may not be sure what's being referred to. So if you want to send us an email to ask a clarifying question, certainly. So in this case, it's referring to the list we see on the left, and I've extracted the cover page of each. So we have 6 different sets of guidelines. Now, in the case of the model standards of conduct for mediators, we see that the American Bar Association, American Arbitration Association, and the Association for Conflict Resolution are all using the same set of standards here, which is great. Consistency between people who are working together is really, really helpful. All right, so the question often comes up, okay, there's a PDF on the course website. How do I cite that? And sometimes, as you might see at the bottom of the JAMS guidelines here, they might have a link specifically to it, or you might have one there that directs you to the right website, but not always. So let's look at how to do it. And you will sometimes find more than one place where things are posted. As is the case, all of these guidelines are publicly accessible. You can download them from the organization websites, and you can download them from the course website. Now, question comes up, well, which should you be citing? And APA has actually guidance on this. So when there's more than one way to cite and reference something, you want to pick the one that's most applicable or most specific to the type of source it is. And then for a URL to include, provided that it's the same exact document, you want to, in general, be picking a publicly accessible site versus a private walled garden like a course website, because someone who's not enrolled in your course at ACU can't access that. But if you link to the organization website where they have the PDF that was taken and put into the course website, well, then anyone can access that. So that is more valuable, more helpful. And if it's a private website, like someone has just stuck this up on their personal website versus it's coming from the official publisher of the journal or the organization who's drafted the policy, you want to pick the official one. All right. So, for example, if we're looking for the model standards of conduct for mediators, you can go ahead and do a search. I use Google here for the name of the organization in quotation marks and the name of the document in quotation marks. And after I confirmed that I'd ended up on the right organization website, I noted that the Model Standards for Mediators Certification Programs link, identified by the arrow on the right, is the document that I was looking for. So how do I cite that? Well, first we follow the formula: who wrote it, when was it published, what's it called, how to find it. So in this case, who wrote it is the Association for Conflict Resolution. The organization claims group authorship or corporate authorship. When was it published? 2011. And if we look back here, if we're looking at this, we see that, they do happen to say adopted on October 10th, 2011. Great. And it even has a copyright at the bottom. So we have that confirmation. And for this type of source, we don't include the month or the day. We just include the publication year. All right. And the title of it, Model Standards for Mediator Certification Programs, which in the reference list, we write in title, not in title case, we write in sentence case. If you are referencing it in the body of your text, you format it in title case in italics, as you see in the citation. All right. And the URL, that's the direct link for the PDF as it loaded. But I found that through the organization website to confirm that that was, in fact, the correct URL, the most specific URL. All right, so citing it. Well, if we're just citing it, okay, we can refer to the document in the line according to the Model Standards of Conduct for Mediators, and then have our source citation with the author, that's the Association for Conflict Resolution, and the date, that's 2011. You can also include it in a parenthetical citation, and where you are referring to it more generally in the text, and to indicate your specific source for that, you have it in a parenthetical citation, as in the second example. Performance-based components are part of many standards, e.g. this and that. And note that when you have multiple citations in the same set of parentheses, make sure you sort it by the author name. In this case, their organization names, so they don't have first names. If it was individuals listed as the author, then we would sort by their last name first, and then if there's more than one but with the same last name, we go by who has the earlier initial in the alphabet. But that doesn't come up a lot in this specifics area. Let's look at a second example. So this is the Uniform Mediation Act, and we see at the bottom they include a URL. Okay, so we want to check and make sure that the URL actually works. Takes us where we're supposed to go, takes us to the same document. And then we go ahead and check. Okay, what's our author name? National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws. What's the title? The Uniform Mediation Act. When was it published? 2001. And the link. Now, if we're going to be citing it with the signal phrase, so good reminder to everyone, make sure you proofread. That will help you catch something. If you look carefully, there is a typo here in that item, cite with the signal phrase. National Conference of, let me go fix that. And that is a good reminder to all of us to proofread before we submit, and especially to proofread on group work, because you want to make sure that it reflects the quality, care, and attention that you are putting into it, and that all members are participating at a high level, and that your work shows that. All right, so the first time you're doing it, citing it, whether it's in a signal phrase or in a citation, you need to spell out the full title of the organization. But if you're going to be citing it a lot, as I suspect you would be for this paper and discussion post, you should consider introducing an abbreviation, which you can see here. It shows how to do that inside a parenthetical citation. You just include the abbreviation in square brackets. That's the NCCUSL. And then thereafter, in the paper, you can just refer to it using the abbreviation, which takes up a whole lot less space than spelling out National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws all the time. Do note, however, that the abbreviation is not used in the references list, as it's just used in the body of the document. All right, so there's some things that these instructions are asking you to do that we would qualify describe as analysis. So reflecting on the similarities and differences and noting what is common to most standards. So analysis in this type of writing refers to a discussion of evidence or argumentation. In this case, the evidence is the different policies for the different groups. And we want to do more than simply present it. Oh, this policy says X. But tell us, how does it compare? And strong analysis will connect the dots between this and give evidence to your argument. So if you're saying, oh, this is common to this, or here are these key differences between that, that's telling us what we should be paying attention to the reader, of what is important. You want to be answering the question, so what, how, or why is this significant? Now, here's some examples of analysis. Oh, in alignment with Achike 2014, Emmanuel 2015 discovered that COPD patients respond positively to the treatment over 1 year. Okay, so we have agreement over that, so that makes it more likely that it is applicable. Smith 2010 found that birth order and personality traits were connected. However, Smith's 2010 results are less likely to be generalizable due to the use of a small, homogeneous population of 11 siblings. Well, sometimes you find something and there's an important bit of context that changes how you vary it. Now, I happen to be one of 11 siblings, and I think my family is great, but I don't think that my family reflects the average American's family, and so your findings on sibling order and personality might be different than ours just because 11 kids is very unusual in the United States in this day and age. So, that is the kind of thing where pointing it out in your analysis may explain why you are disregarding something. So you might find, oh, here's this element that's common to these things, but it doesn't really apply to our situation. For example, on the other side, you might be finding, okay, there's entire agreement, so since this is used across the industry, maybe we should use it in our organizational policy too. Next up, there are instructions here indicating that you should be synthesizing it. You should be creating new, original ideas or questions that you're going to be responding to and ultimately using to inform the policy you draft. So, because this is creating new information, that's a request for synthesis. So that synthesis is your discussion of the multiple pieces of evidence. Not just reporting, oh, this is the same, this is different, but okay, what does that mean? And so you're building new conclusions based on whatever relationships you point out between the different points of evidence. And that can mean things like answering questions like, okay, what does this mean put together? Or how are you, as the author, interpreting what you presented? What are you deeming as worthy or not worthy of doing? What is worthy being changed or adopted, perhaps? Some examples. Okay, these consistent results across multiple studies and diverse populations validate the applicability of this model to this problem. Or the recent research on this thing, in various contexts, means that it could also be an effective tool for higher education administration. So you see the bolded text is pointing out what is the synthesis of the sentence. In the second bullet, the first thing is the analysis portion, which is saying, okay, there's this thing in different contexts that we've discussed earlier, and what does that mean? Oh, that's a bolded part. The synthesis means that it could also be an effective tool for this use. Similarly, in light of the 100% agreement between study policies on including this thing, the Peace in Our Time organization should adopt blah, whatever your policy recommendation happens to be. Now, with the outlining and drafting part, so this is something where, again, you are building on your work in the discussion portion, where the assignment instructions ask you to discuss things in the group forum, in the group discussion board, and that you identify the organization that you are creating or imagining for this, and then you're going to work on writing this PEP statement and rationale together. Now, there are various ways you can do that, but I am going to suggest that when it comes to writing the document that you turn in, that you use a Google document because it makes it very easy for everyone to see the most current, most recent, most applicable version of the document, to write different things at the same time, and also to track who's done what, to make sure that you are contributing equitably and equally with your group. So we happen to have a webinar prepared for another class in the CONR program that deals with just this thing. And so I'm going to recommend that you watch this video using Google Docs to facilitate group projects, because it delves into exactly how to do that. Now, if you are feeling great on that, not a problem. By the way, you can also import our APA course paper template into Google Docs. So you just go to File and open the document in question. Let's look at how that works. So here I have Google Docs open, and I'm just going to start by creating a blank document. Now, you can go ahead and start titling this and sharing things, but the first thing I want to do is to import the document in question. And the way I do that is by going to Open. And it can open things that I already have, or go to Upload. And in this case, I do have a copy of the APA course paper template that I was working with earlier, so let me go ahead and bring that up on my computer. So I have in my Downloads folder this APA course paper template document. Download it here. Upload. And we find that we have all those elements that we need for our paper about how it looks already in there to start. And we can add things. If you have been, as I suggest, citing and referencing the different sources in your discussion board posts as you go, you can go ahead and quickly import all those references by copy and pasting them into the references section. You can also start drafting an outline here. I do recommend that you use the instructions as a guide there. And in fact, we can take a look back at that now. So if we look at the assignment instructions, we have these notes here. Okay, we have an outline even. Now, one of the reasons I recommend starting to set this up and importing the document before you invite your colleagues is that if you were to invite them now, it'll just say the course paper template here, as opposed to CONR 638, group assignment, week 1. Now, if I invite them, it'll say, oh, Basil has invited you to edit CONR 638, group assignment, week 1. And so it won't be, what template, why? To invite people, share, and you can type in their email addresses here. You'll want to give them access at the editor level so they can type things in. And when you start pasting things in, people who have accepted to edit this, okay, so if you're typing in someone's email address, let's say that you... So it's helpful to include a note here that what you want people to do, so they don't just say, oh, they sent me the invite and don't do anything. So in this case, asking them to check in so we know when they've added things. And then when you are writing things, you can start filling in this outline, because this is a list of things that you're going to be needing to include. So it's a reminder of what you should be pulling from the discussion board and what you should be writing for the discussion board. This section, for example, you can even keep a running draft as you're still writing things. You can see them all together in one easy point here. And if you divide the summaries of the standards from the different group members, then each person will be contributing here, and you can even go ahead and list each group. We know that there are going to be 6. And then each person will go ahead and add one, and it's very easy to see when something has been done. All right, the rest should be pretty straightforward because you're developing this on the discussion board and you'll be following up with the group members. So we'll just say, make sure that you list everyone's names here. It's rather unfortunate when someone submits the group work and they forget their colleagues there, and the instructor has to come back and ask, okay, so who was in your group? Is there something I should know about who wasn't contributing? So make sure to credit everyone, It's a good thing to do early on, because if you're rushing to finish, then it's very easy to accidentally leave something like that out. And it's important enough. We want to make sure everyone gets their credit. All right. If you have any questions, please feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu to schedule an appointment for feedback, or visit the Writing Center website for the template and other resources. Thank you for watching. We will catch you later.